Hello and welcome to the Russian World Culture video. In this edition, we will visit with Laura Lee Yutz, Curator of Education for the Grace Museum in Abilene, Texas. Our focus will be on the Russian Impressionism collection of art from the Soviet era. This era is not very well known in America. The Russian Impressionism displays paintings portraying the everyday life of common people. According to many art specialists, the introduction of these paintings into the American art scene is considered to be a significant discovery. This exhibit would not have been possible without the generous contributions from Ray E. Johnson, owner of Overland Galleries in Scottsdale, Arizona, and many other private collectors who loaned their artworks for this exhibit.
It wasn't until 1989 that three men from Scottsdale, Arizona, or associated with the Overland Gallery in Scottsdale, Arizona, first traveled to Russia and discovered these paintings. Until that time, they had been hidden from Western eyes entirely. They began bringing the paintings out, and since 1989, they've brought over 12,000 out. But they've never been in museum exhibitions, or they're not in the art history textbooks. They're really kind of a recent discovery. And they've only been on view in the United States in 2 prior museum exhibitions. So not only is this special for Abilene and Texas, but for all of the United States that we brought them to the Grace Museum. I think that we have seen so many pictures of Russia and we imagine it as this cold and bleak and stark country. And granted, the geography and the climate does add to somewhat of the human psyche and condition over there, but the color palettes that you see in these paintings is warm and vibrant. And I think that by calling them examples of Russian Impressionism, it really allows us to look at them in terms of color and light. They're very reminiscent of French or American Impressionism in the way the paint is applied to the canvas. These big vivid brush strokes or wild brush strokes. The way that the sunlight flows in through the window or through an open doorway. And the play of all these different colors in an area that from far away might just appear to be green grass is really wonderful. And of course, the Russian artists who are shown in this gallery were very highly trained professional artists. In order for them to be able to go to art school in Russia, they had to show great talent and to be exemplary artists. And in Russia, there were some incredible art institutes and training programs in the early part of the 20th century. The Repin Institute and the Serkov Institute were very competitive, and that's where these artists would have trained. They went through a very rigorous and traditional art program, looking back at world masters and the classics in art history. So they had a foundation for these paintings that we're looking at today, but then we're able to take that further and really explore color and light. And it would be naive for us to just look at them only for an aesthetic point of view. There was a message involved. This was the government-sanctioned art form. So to leave that part of the story out would be irresponsible from the point of view of a museum and as a teaching institution. They were propaganda. These pieces were commissioned by the government. They hung in public spaces, libraries, museums, galleries, and those kinds of things. They were really used as a teaching tool or a visual tool to promote communism, to help the masses to believe in the common cause, and to believe that they could achieve the utopia that communism strove to achieve. But by the same token, within those parameters and within those kind of rules, the artists still were able to be sensitive to their subject matter and to their art making. And so I think that you can look at these from an aesthetic point of view and appreciate them as incredible works of art. But we do need to know that they are part of the story of the Soviet era. Well, and that's just it, that the artists who went through the training program in the Soviet Union created a large body of work. Most likely, the government only commissioned or actually bought about 20% of their output. That left 80% of their output for their own personal exploration and the things that they wanted to express and for them to create for their own needs. So some of the paintings you see in here probably have no hidden agenda, have no socialist message to them. They're just a study of a still life or perhaps a painting of a family member or a dear friend. And so those we can particularly look at for just what they are. But then we definitely have examples of a socialist agenda as well. Okay, my favorite painting in the exhibit is probably Boscakov's Milkmaid's Novella, and it's a wonderful painting, and so many people who come into the gallery are just tickled by it. One, it's a massive picture, it's very large, and so you can't help but notice it when you walk in. But I think one of the main reasons why people just gravitate toward it, it just reminds you that the people in Russia were people like us, with shared experiences. Here you have three women obviously enjoying a great joke or the latest village gossip or a good story. And I don't know if you paint or not, but if you've ever tried to paint somebody laughing, it's very difficult. Often it turns out very hokey or forced looking, and it is so natural that one of the women, it looks like she's falling over, she's laughing so hard, as another one is holding her side, and they're really enjoying each other's company. And so I think it's important to remember that despite the political agendas or despite the threat of the Cold War, that people in Russia grew up, they fell in love, they had families, they had dear friends, and those commonalities are shared worldwide. And so without knowing that this painting's even from Russia, people can appreciate and just love this painting. The other thing that's really interesting about it is it's a little atypical from some of the other paintings in the exhibit. This was painted in the 60s, and we know that Stalin died in 1953, and this kind of painting would have never been allowed when Stalin was alive because the women are in a moment of leisure. They're not busy at their work. We can assume that maybe those milk canisters are already full and now they're taking a break after they've done their morning jobs, but they're obviously having a moment that's one of personal time instead of working for the greater good. The other thing that's wonderful about this painting is it's a great example of Impressionism. And when we titled the show Russian Impressionism as kind of a user-friendly title, when you look at these paintings, they are reminiscent of French or American Impressionism, the way the colors and the light and the paint all work together. But while the French and American Impressionists were celebrating the leisure class, we had pictures of people at the boating party or the polo races or the ballet, things like that. These paintings are celebrating the working classes. And so we have pictures like this of the milkmaids, or a picture of an electrician, or a man who works in a steel plant. Those are who these artists are celebrating and almost promoting to a heroic status. So it's a little bit different. But this painting is wonderful as far as looking at the color and light, because when you get up really close to it, you notice that there are no true pure colors. Even the white of the milkmaids' dresses are a fusion of pinks and purples and blues and yellows and browns, and same within the grass areas. All kinds of colors come together, and that's what Impressionism was about, seeing how light affected the study of color and the application of color in a painting. One of the paintings is actually entitled The Big Surprise, and many of the young school children really like this painting because, again, it's just a real kind of slice of life image, and you have the three kids home alone, and it's kind of like dun 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 dun. Mom has walked in and caught one of the boys smoking, and her eyes are really big and wide, and you can see he's blowing smoke rings, and probably the little sister is very excited as she knows he's going to get it, and that she told him not to smoke when Mom wasn't home. So this painting is really important, especially when we bring young students into the exhibit. Young elementary students have no idea what it means when we talk about communism or what the Cold War was like as our two countries went through the last 30 years together. But they can look at that painting and say, wow, that little girl has a teddy bear, I have a teddy bear at home, or I've gotten caught doing something I wasn't supposed to, or you know, that home looks kind of like my home. And so I think any time that we can set up human commonalities or shared experiences, it makes it not be an us-them experience, or we're studying a culture or a country on the other side of the world far away that I'll never have anything to deal with. We're not a world like that anymore. As we go into the 21st century, we can't go through with blinders on. So that's a really good way to interest young people into looking at art, or even to exploring other cultures, is show them first what are our shared experiences, and then from there we can talk about some of the things that are a little bit different. Yes, we have a wonderful, varied audience in West Texas out here, and so lots of different people come with their own personal experiences and interest in art. I think one of the things that our older audiences have been so interested in looking at these paintings are the images of the Great War, of World War II, and in Russia that was referred to as the Great Patriotic War. And of course, even in Abilene, we had people who served in World War II, many veterans and whatnot. In the painting Anxiety, I think that's a really good image to look at as far as understanding those conflicts and kind of horrors of war. That painting was done in 1965, and in the picture you have an image of a grandfather figure, and he's wearing his Red Army uniform. And on his uniform you can see that there's the red star with the hammer and sickle motif on the red star. And he's old and he's tired, his face is worn, and he has wrinkles on his face. And 1965 was a time of great unrest worldwide. In the United States and in Russia, people were entering the Vietnam War. He had obviously served in World War II and knew the horrors of war. And as he stands with his granddaughter, he's probably very concerned about her future and what lies ahead. That was the threat of the whole nuclear age, the nuclear war. And it's as if he's turning his face away from it, not wanting to see what the future might hold for her. But yet then you have the granddaughter, and she's full of optimism. She's facing the future head on. Her face is full and rosy and glowy, and we know that there was such a youth culture and explosion in the United States. That was kind of felt worldwide as the youth of the world were excited to see what was going to happen at the end of the 20th century. He puts his hand on her shoulder as if to kind of comfort her and tell her it's all going to be okay. And so you have this kind of clash of ages and clash of the then and the now and the present and what's going to happen. Another really interesting picture as far as looking at the effects of World War II is By the Window. And in that scene, you have a woman who's obviously in the advanced state of pregnancy, and she's standing by or sitting by an open window, and she's doing some sort of needlework. And out the window, you can see across the way an apartment building that probably echoes or mirrors the one that she's in. And during the Great Patriotic War in Russia, so many of the major cities were bombed and destroyed, leaving people homeless. And the government's response to that was to build public housing, and these apartment buildings were constructed. Unfortunately, many of them, I've been told, were done with kind of poor materials and less than perfect construction methods and whatnot. And while every family was given a home to live in, they were small and not necessarily adequate for all the people in their family. But yet the message of having her stand by a window as a pregnant woman, the kind of the socialist agenda with that picture would be to imply the future generation, her child, would be provided for under communism and would be cared for. But yet we know that there were still problems with that system at the same time. In the monastery painting, it's an interesting one for several reasons. One, it's a really good example of looking at architecture, and that's really exciting. In studying the visual arts, I think it's also important to look at architecture history, especially religious architecture. And these three monastery buildings are located out in the countryside in Russia. We know that actually within the first 3 or 4 years of communist rule that Lenin had over 10,000 churches bombed and destroyed. And so regardless of what somebody's religious faith or practices had been, that was ripped from them under the doctrines of communism, that organized religion wasn't allowed. Many churches were bombed and destroyed, but some out in the countrysides did remain intact. And this is really important for telling that part of their story, but also sharing some of the architectural elements that are unique to Russia, including the onion domes, which are so easily identifiable, the onion dome cupolas. And also on this picture, it's interesting because you also get a sense of how those monastery buildings work together. In the very large, weighty, massive building to the far left, there's only 3 small, thin windows, and that would have been the winter church because it was so cold. And then over to the far right in the picture, you have a white monastery building that has many windows in it, and that would have been the summer church, when they could have opened the windows or allowed the sun to come in. The thing that's atypical about this picture is that the one lone figure seems to melt into the landscape itself, whereas most socialist realism paintings glorify the worker or the person and really elevate them to almost heroic status and size. In this picture, it's the building and the land that's being given the emphasis, and the person seems to just blend into the land. It's a little different. These are wonderful portrait studies as well, and several people ask, is this an actual person? Is it a real sitting, or is it a fictitious person? And I think for the most part, these are actual people. Many times the painters will actually include the sitter's name in the title of the painting, so we really get a sense of who it is and their occupation. And I think that there is a great attention to those facial details. Now, perhaps in some way there's a propaganda message to that. Everyone's shown with kind of these rosy cheeks, and they're well-fed and kind of happy in their work. But at the same time, I think that we get a real look into the inner personalities of some of these people. Nina, the road worker, is a wonderful picture where you can just imagine this woman being your friend, and you just bumped into her going down the road to the well. She's a great image. Same with even the young pioneer at the door, as you see this young girl who's either on her way to school or on her way home, and she's picked a bundle of fresh lilacs. You really get a sense of getting to see into her, almost into her soul through her eyes and her facial expression. They're really wonderful character studies. This is really a special assemblage of paintings. Overland Gallery in Scottsdale, Arizona actually curated the exhibition. They were the gallery that actually began bringing the paintings out of the former Soviet Union. Since 1989, they've brought 12,000 paintings out, and they've sold them in the United States and abroad, internationally. They have clients internationally. Many of these paintings are from private collections around the United States, and they generously loan them to us through the holiday season, and they will return to their homes. This exhibition isn't traveling to anywhere else in the United States. Some will go back to the gallery, but most of them will go back to the private owners.
This is a real unique.
It is. Well, it's a real treat. We didn't know that these paintings existed. They really were kind of the art history find of the 1990s. And because if you go to Russia today, these paintings are not on exhibition. In their own country, they're almost despised or thought of as reflecting a time or a period in which the people want to forget. Now that the Russian people are trying to establish a democracy or trying to change things, they don't want to see examples of communist propaganda or a socialist agenda. So many of the artists that are shown in this gallery were born in 1920 or around then. The men from Overland Gallery were able to go and actually meet with several of the artists now in their 80s and dig through the attic and under the bed and in the basement through the crates of their paintings to select pieces that otherwise would have most likely been lost forever. We're losing a whole generation of those artists as they're beginning to pass away. The Windows to Heaven exhibition has really been a powerful one. Abilene is a very religious community. We have 3 religious affiliated universities and a very strong religious community. And I think that regardless of the fact that the Eastern Orthodox Church is a little bit different from our own denominations here in Texas, there's such a powerful spiritual feeling that is evoked from these pieces that almost anybody can relate to them, whether or not they are a religious even person or not, or a practicing religious person. They're very powerful. What's interesting about the icons is there are 53 icons, and they're from a private collection in Waco, Texas. And like I said, they fill in a really important part of the story. They're from the 18th and 19th century. And when we talk about what it must have been like, the human experience of the peasants or the working poor in Russia during the 18th and 19th century, it was pretty miserable. And we talk about it being bleak and cold and feeling almost hopeless. I think those icons were very important to the people at the time. And as you look at them, the saints represented on them, or the holy figures represented on them, were really treated as almost silent listeners. People really believed that those saints represented on the icons would watch out and protect their family and perhaps intercede on their behalf to God. So this idea that you would pray to a saint on your icon and ask the saint to watch over your family, provide enough food, care for your livestock, or even allow you to make it through the night to see another day is something that's hard to relate to in 1998. But we try to express that with our visitors, that they were very important and very personal, and they were family treasures. They really believed that the saints represented on the icons were part of a family's history, that they had seen the good and the bad, the marriages, the deaths, the births, and it really witnessed to part of that family's history. And so they were passed down generation to generation. I came across one reading that referred to them as silent listeners, which I think is very comforting, the idea that a saint would watch over and protect you. And then the photographs by Lucian Perkins are also very fascinating. When we talk about photography as art versus photography as photojournalism, there's lots of interesting ideas there. And Lucian Perkins is a photographer for the Washington Post who's been on assignment many times in the last 8 to 10 years in Russia. And by taking black and white photographs, it almost seems to be a historical truth or a documentation of what he sees when he goes. And it brings it back around full circle, as there's pictures of people voting in the first Democratic election over there, or images of Boris Yeltsin running for his presidency. But by the same token, while, you know, kind of recording history, he's also recording some of the horrors that people are experiencing there. There's some images of gypsy camps being raided, or bombing in Grozny or Chechnya. And you get a real sense of, despite the fact that now they have freedoms, that they're still in great turmoil and trying to figure out what that freedom will mean and how they can then offer that freedom to all the people. And so those photographs are very, very powerful and very moving as they document almost the truth of today. This has been wonderful for me as an art historian because it fills in a large gap that had been missing. For so long, we were taught that during the Soviet era, artists were creating these almost robotic, like mechanical images that were void of expression and feeling. They were almost, you know, these just mass-produced, cold, hard paintings. And in fact, they were left out of the major, you know, art history journals. These paintings are not in a Jansen or a Gardner book. This is really filling in a large portion of the story that had been missing. And what's so wonderful for art historians is to celebrate what was going on in the Soviet Union at that time, because when you see these paintings, you can see that these artists were just celebrating life and celebrating art and the opportunity to get to be expressive. Granted, it was under the kind of umbrella of following these rules by the government, but then within that, they had the freedom to be expressive and to show their great talent. It's wonderful to fill in this part of the story.
Здравствуйте, доброе утро, добрый день, добро пожаловать на урок русского языка. Итак, давайте начнем работать. Today, let us begin our class by talking about a few concepts of the Russian grammar that are very, very important for us. Let's begin with the verb conjugation. You remember that in the present tense, Russian verbs conjugate. Let's take the verb читать. That was probably the first verb that we learned with you. Читать. Я читаю, ты читаешь, он читает, мы читаем, вы читаете, они читают. Now the verb читать, which conjugation does it belong to? The first conjugation. It's a first conjugation verb. Я читаю, ты читаешь, он читает. In the ending of the first conjugation verbs, we have the «е» vowel. Ты читаешь, он читает, мы читаем, вы читаете. Хорошо. Let's practice with another verb. Let's take the verb говорить. Говорить. Говорить по-русски. Я говорю по-русски. Ты говоришь по-русски. Он говорит по-русски. Мы говорим по-русски. Вы говорите по-русски. Они говорят по-русски. And which conjugation does this verb belong? It belongs to the second conjugation. Говорить is a second conjugation verb. And in the verbal endings, we have the vowel «и». Ты говоришь, он говорит, мы говорим, вы говорите. And then in the third person plural form, we have «я». Они говорят. Они говорят по-русски. So verbs conjugate in the present tense, and you should be very comfortable with the conjugation pattern for both the first conjugation verbs and the second conjugation verbs. Just remember about the difference. The difference is in the vowel. «е» appears in the endings for the first conjugation verbs, and then the second conjugation endings come with the vowel «и». Ты говоришь, он говорит. So verb conjugation is a very important thing for you to remember about. What is so important and so interesting about Russian nouns? Книга, журнал, письмо. Gender. Gender. You remember that each noun is either a masculine noun or a feminine noun or a neuter noun, and you should be able to identify the gender of any Russian noun. How do you do that? You look at the ending, and if a noun ends in a consonant, then it's a masculine noun. Стол, журнал, город, компьютер, телевизор, портфель. These are masculine nouns. They end in consonants. What about feminine nouns? What is the generic feminine ending in the Russian language? А. So all those nouns that end in А are feminine nouns. Книга, газета, квартира. And nouns ending in «я» are also feminine nouns. Кухня or деревня. These are feminine nouns too. The exception to this general rule is a group of masculine nouns that end in «а», such as папа, дедушка, and then male nicknames Ваня, Петя, etc., etc. Хорошо. Neuter nouns. What do we know about neuter nouns? They end in «о» or «е». Письмо is neuter. Упражнение is neuter. Радио another example of a neuter noun, or metro, море. Море ends in ye, and it also belongs to this group of neuter nouns. So gender is a very important concept when it comes to Russian nouns. We have to remember about gender, and you have to remember how to identify gender of Russian nouns. Now, nouns and adjectives. What should we remember about nouns and adjectives? Adjectives agree with nouns in number and gender. And then we talk about интересный журнал. But интересная книга. Интересное письмо. Интересные газеты и журналы. Новый дом. But новая квартира. So you have to remember about the agreement between adjectives and nouns. And in an adjective-noun relationship, the noun is the leader and the adjective is a follower. Adjectives agree with nouns in number and gender. So please remember these things. Хорошо. So this was a very brief review of those very important concepts of the Russian grammar that you always need to be aware of. Well, we started this brief overview with the verbs. And when it comes to the Russian verb, we have only been practicing with the present tense verbs. But Russian verbs have three tenses: present, past, and future. So far, we have only been practicing with the present tense, and you actually learned everything that you need to know about the present tense of the Russian verbs. Now, today, we will start looking at the past tense, and we will be, by the end of this lesson, you will be able to work with the Russian verbs in the past tense. Okay. So we are beginning a new unit, a new lesson in the textbook. Мы начинаем изучать урок номер 10. Урок номер 10. So now we are on lesson number 10 in the Russian for Everybody textbook. Мы начинаем изучать урок номер 10. So please take your textbooks, find урок номер 10. We are on page 176 and look at section 10.1, the first section in урок номер 10. And what does it say? The past tense. So this is what we are going to talk about now, the formation of the past tense. Well, what do we do with the past tense? Or how do we build a past tense form? What do we start with? And we start with an infinitive. So let's take a look at this. Infinitives. You should remember that Russian infinitives end in the and the soft sign. We can think of the and the soft sign as an infinitive ending. Работать, жить, говорить, смотреть. Russian verbs in their infinitive forms end in the and the soft sign. Работать, to work, жить, to live, говорить, to speak, to talk, смотреть, to look, to watch. Russian infinitives end in the and the soft sign. And when we need to build a past tense form, this is what we start with. We start with an infinitive form. And what do we do? What would be the first step? So this is what we are discussing now. The first step in the formation of the past tense. Is everybody ready? Let's take a look at this. This is the first thing that we do. Drop the and the soft sign from the infinitive. the verb stem remains. Let's look at the verb работать. If you get rid of the and the soft sign at the end, what remains is called the verb stem. And the verb stem of работать is работа. That's the yellow part of this verb. Работа. Now, жить is a very short verb, but still we have to get rid of the and the soft sign at the end. And the verb stem is жи. Just a two-letter verb stem. Жи. Говорить. Again, let's get rid of the infinitive ending. So the verb stem of говорить is говори. Смотреть. To look, to watch. Again, let's get rid of the and the soft sign and let's find the verb stem. The verb stem of смотреть is смотри. So the very first thing that we need to do when we are building a past tense form is we have to get rid of the and the soft sign. We have to drop the infinitive ending and we need to find the verb stem. Because this is what we will proceed from, the verb stem. Okay. Хорошо. So this is your first step. We got rid of the infinitive ending, we found the verb stem, and then we need to add the past tense suffix to the verb stem. Let's take a look at this. This is step 2. Add L to the verb stem. L is the past tense suffix. Работал, worked. Жил, говорил, смотрел. This L is the past tense suffix. Работал, worked, жил, lived, говорил, talked, смотрел, watched. Works just like the ED in the English language. Работал, жил, говорил, смотрел. Хорошо. Хорошо. There's nothing too difficult about this. The first thing you do is you get rid of the infinitive ending, you find the verb stem, and then you put this little past tense suffix. That's easy. But then remember, Russian is a genderized language, and gender is very, very important. And even the verbs in the past tense have genderized form. That's our step 3. Let's take a look at this. After we added the L to the verb to make it a past tense form, we need to remember that verbs in the past tense have masculine, feminine, and plural forms. Работал is masculine, and you remember that a consonant, any kind of consonant, is a generic masculine ending in the Russian language. Работала is a feminine form. Now we are adding a after L. Работала. Работало is neuter. O is our neuter ending. Работали with the E ending after L is plural. Работал, he worked. Работала, she worked. Now, работало, you will be using this past tense form with a neuter noun. Работали, they worked. Работал, работала, работало, работали. verbs in the past tense have masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural forms. Masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural forms. Oh, хорошо. So one more time. Here's an easy 3-step procedure that you have to remember about. The first thing you do is you chop off the and the soft sign from an infinitive, and you have the verb stem. Then you add L to the verb stem to make it past tense. And then you have to think of whether you need a masculine, feminine, neuter, or plural form. And for the feminine form, you add a, работала. For the neuter form, you add o, работало. For the plural form, you add и, работали. Хорошо. And now let's practice. So please pick up your pens and pencils. Возьмите ручки или карандаши. And let's take a look at this verb. Читать. Now let's put it in the past tense. And we shall start with он. He read. Он читал. And now I'm adding L. Remember, the first thing we have to do is we get rid of the and the soft sign. Чита is the verb stem. And then we added L for the past tense. Он читал. But let's make it feminine now. Она чита. That's your verb stem. L for the past tense. And now I need the feminine ending. Читала. Она читала. She read. How about the plural form? Они. And we are doing the same thing. Чита is the verb stem. Then we are adding L for the past tense and И for the plural form. Они читали. Они читали. Let's make up a few sentences with читал, читала, and читали. We can say Иван Иванович читал газету. Anna Petrovna was reading a book. Anna Petrovna читала книгу. Let's say Maxim and Nina were reading magazines. Maxim и Nina читали журналы. Maxim и Nina читали журналы. Хорошо, let's take a look at another verb. Let's practice with делать. Делать. And again we shall begin with the masculine form. Okay, what's the verb stem here? Дело. So он делал. Он делал. Она делала. And let's work on this. Они дела. Again, I need L for the past tense, and I need to add the plural ending. И. Они делали. Они делали. Хорошо. Well, let's say Maxim was doing his homework. Maxim делал уроки. Now let's say the same thing about Nina. Nina делала уроки. They were doing homework. Они делали уроки. Они делали уроки. Хорошо. And I would like for you to practice with one more verb. Let's take a look at this. Слушать. Слушать. Итак, он слушал. Он слушал. Так, она слушала. Here we have the verb stem, L for the past tense, A to make it feminine. And give me the plural form. Они слушали. Again, L for the past tense, E to make it plural. Они слушали. Он слушал. Она слушала. Они слушали. Хорошо. So, Максим слушал музыку. Say the same thing about Nina. Nina слушала музыку. Они, now we're making a statement about both of them. Они слушали музыку. Хорошо, хорошо. Well, when we use the past tense, we talk about the events or things that happened sometime in the past. Very often we talk about things that happened yesterday. So let's take a look at this word. Вчера. Вчера. This is the Russian word for yesterday. Вчера. Вчера. Yesterday. And let's look at this example. Let's see what happened yesterday evening in Ivan Ivanovич's household. Вчера вечером Максим и Нина делали уроки. Иван Иванович читал, а Анна Петровна слушала музыку. Анна Петровна слушала музыку. And notice the verb forms. Максим и Нина делали уроки, plural. Иван Иванович читал, that's a masculine verb. And Анна Петровна слушала музыку. Хорошо, хорошо. But the interesting question is, what do we do when we have я or ты as the subject of the sentence? And then the gender of the verb agrees with the gender of the person. The gender of the verb agrees with the gender of the person. Let's take a look at this very short dialogue. Максим, что ты вчера делал? We are talking to Maxim, and the gender of the verb делал agrees with his gender. He is a boy, masculine. Что ты вчера делал? And Maxim says, я играл в футбол, а потом смотрел телевизор. Maxim is talking about himself, and he uses masculine forms. They agree with his own gender. Я играл в футбол, а потом смотрел телевизор. So when we have я or ты as the subject of the sentence, the gender of the verb agrees with the person's gender. Let's take a look at another dialogue. This time we are talking to Nina, and Nina is a girl. Nina, что ты вчера делала? Я слушала музыку, а потом смотрела телевизор. Now all the verbs in this dialogue are feminine verbs because Nina is a girl, right? When we have я or ты as the subject of the sentence, the gender of the past tense verb agrees with the gender of that person. So you have to be very careful here. Just remember that verbs in the past tense have masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural forms. And gender, as you know, is a very, very important thing in the Russian language. So, pull out your additional exercises sheets, and right after this lesson is over, start working on that, and you will receive additional practice with formation of the past tense. Then, what I need you to do at home is very carefully review notes taken during today's class. Review the procedure for the formation of the past tense and complete this translation exercise. I want you to translate these 4 sentences from English into Russian. Notice that in the translation exercise, you will have to use verbs of different genders. Anton played, Natasha watched, we listened, and in number 4, Oleg, what did you do yesterday? Again, you will have to make a choice on the gender of the verb. Okay. Just review everything that we learned during today's lesson, and you are in a very good shape to complete this exercise and not make a single mistake in it. Что ж, хорошо, хорошо. Сегодня мы много работали. Today we did a lot during this lesson. We worked a lot. We accomplished a lot. Мы много работали. Мы говорили по-русски. Мы читали по-русски. Мы писали по-русски. Так, большое спасибо и до свидания.